Okay, I'm filming you. So
nice.
I would like to ask, what should the people do if they find a piece of private property encroaching on city property? Like, for instance, in the public easement alongside a publicly owned street. What should citizens do if they see private property like that encroaching? What should we do? If we don't like it, if we want to complain, what do we do?
Just as you have emailed us and let us know about it, and then we look into it.
Okay, so I have done that for several encroachments,
And we are looking into it.
I've received. But you only have 3 business days before you should remove the encroachments.
I know
Yeah, that's the
looking
policy.
into it.
No, that is the policy. 3 business days, and so we have, for instance, that rusting sculpture that's that 30 it's right behind Can't Fail Cafe on Park Avenue, right next to City Hall. That rusting sculpture extends about 42 inches into the public easement. I complained about that 3 business days ago, so it's not quite 5 o'clock yet. Is that going to be removed at 5, before 5? I see, like, it's not quite 5, but
I don't have the details of that. I just know that your complaint is being looked into, and they are trying to address
but what's the
it.
policy? 3 days, right?
I don't know. I'd have to get back to you on that.
What if somebody has well, I know that it is 3 days because that's all I was given from my community bulletin board. It is 3 days.
Once you're given notice of it, then if that's what the notice said, then yeah.
Yeah, so it's 3 days. That's how much, 3 business days is what you got. So the, I had for my community bulletin board, I have pending, or I have on file here at City Hall, an encroachment permit that I filled out.
After the fact.
Whatever, what do you mean after what fact?
After you installed the community bulletin board? that you
Yes,
put?
after the fact,
Okay.
after that fact, yes, I placed it, I applied for an encroachment permit.
Okay.
And so so the city is looking at that presumably to decide whether or not I get to do it. But in the
Correct.
meanwhile, the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing because the city also removed it, my community bulletin board.
Right, I think your permit came in after that's been, your encroachment permit came in after, so they're evaluating that now.
Why
But-
wouldn't you wait to remove the community bulletin board until you decide about whether or not to grant the encroachment permit?
I'd have to look into that and find out what the reason they did that.
Is that a reasonable question?
Yes.
So
we can get your
there's a
answer.
permit pending, you still destroy the private property?
It hasn't been destroyed, it's just been removed.
No, it's been destroyed.
No.
There has to be damage to it. By definition, I know because I'm the one that installed it. I know how it's installed. There has to be damage to it by definition, unless you jackhammered up the sidewalk, and I noticed you didn't. So there is damage to it. So you destroyed my property, this community bulletin board.
I know it was removed, I
And-
don't know that it was
Yeah,
destroyed,
no.
but it was removed, and
It was damaged.
you'll be called or emailed with information to be able to pick it up.
I want it right now. Why can't I
Can't
have it
do it
now?
right now, we have to schedule something with the public works manager. to
Why? That's thievery.
pick it up.
It's my property. You have it. It doesn't belong to you. I want it back.
You put it on city property, which is not your property, and so
I
remove
put
from it.
bicycles on city property. Are you going to take them?
This was notified to you that it would be removed, and so you had notice, correct? You just said you had 3 days given notice to remove it, and it was removed because it wasn't by the city.
Well, all that would be compelling, except for the fact that it's selective. The justice is selective because the rusting sculpture next to City Hall still stays 3 days after you receive the complaint. So
I don't know the details of it, so I'd have to get back to you on that.
the former mayor of Emeryville, Diane Martinez, placed in the public easement a so-called little library.
Okay.
I made a complaint about that. That's still there. Are you going to remove that?
Like I said, they're looking into it.
It's really popular with the community, especially the children. Is it the city's policy that you guys want to have activated sidewalks and active community and engagement and having the citizens engaged in the city of Emeryville and talking to each other? Or do you guys want atomization and individualism and everybody cocooning in their homes and not going out on the sidewalks? What's the city prefer?
The city overall wants the community to engage with the city,
And yet you took away a community bulletin board that was
Not approved.
7 inches into the public easement, whereas you're letting all this other stuff like little libraries, somebody's sculpture for sale. And I've been around Emeryville, Pedro, there are like 30, 40 examples, and I'm going to be sending them to the city of Emeryville. I'm making complaints about them all. Can I I want you to assure me of something. I want you to assure me that I will be treated, everyone's treated fairly and equitably by the city of Emeryville. You don't, if there's a critic, of the city hall's public policies, that critic will be treated fairly and equitably along with everyone else.
I would say you should be, yes.
And is there a way to know that the public can know? Oh, that's a fair and equal treatment. How do we know that you're engaging in what you say you want to engage in? How can we look at what you're doing and be assured that, oh yeah, the city is engaging in fair and equal treatment under the law for all people here?
I guess
They're
you'd
not
see it
favoritism.
based on the results that come out of it, right? Or
The results. So that means
information.
so my community bulletin board was taken by the city, even though I had a pending permit. But so these other items in the public easement, so they should be gone in the equal amount of time. That would be an indication that you're treating people fairly and equitably,
Well,
correct?
it depends on the complaint. It's complaint driven, right? So same as
Yeah,
your
I've made
board was
complaints about
complaint
them.
driven,
I've
someone
made
complained
complaints
about-
about them. So
right, someone made a complaint about your community board.
Yes, yes.
It was looked into, and then it. Then
So
it
the
gets
other things are
addressed
going to be
and goes-
looked into, the little libraries and all the other
Yeah, you put it
complaints.
in the complaints
And I'm
that
going to
are
be
being
making
looked
these
into.
weekly, or like a couple times a week over the next year or so. And so you're going to be looking at all of them, and if they're in fact not placed there by Public Works, they're going to be removed.
They're going to be looked into, yes.
No, removed.
Right, they'll be looked into, and
Well,
if they.
if they're
determine
looked
that it
into,
should be
okay, but if they're quote looked into and they get to stay, how do we know that you're treating everyone fairly and equitably?
I guess it would be based on what's the reasoning that it'll be removed, right? And
So you're going to tell us why certain things are removed and why others are not. So
doesn't
why
fall in
why was my community bulletin board removed?
Because
Why?
it was public right of way and
Yes.
complaint driven.
Yeah,
and
and it
not
was a-
permission to have it on that property.
Okay, so that's the standard. So are you going to apply the standard fairly and equitably to all people?
I'm not sure if I'm covering all bases, so it's something I'd have to get back to you. What else is the reason that?
You seem to be struggling with this, Pedro. Fairness and equitability.
If I don't know the answer.
Fairness
right now.
and equitability. Why does this seem to be a problem?
It's not. It's
Okay, so the standard from my bulletin board was, one, it was placed on city property without permission, even though I asked for permission later, and that's no good. Okay, that's fine. Although I disagree with that, but that's your metric, that's your standard. And then there was a complaint about it, and then you looked into it, and you realized,
So
okay,
if
there's
they're
those
not in compliance with the
items.
city
There's
rules-
2 items happened, so it has to be removed. So that's going to be all the other things on not placed by Public Works on city property are going to have the same standard. 1, is there a complaint against it? 2, did its Public Works or anybody from the city place it there? And if those 2 conditions are
and
not
it's
met,
and it's not in
then
compliance with any other approval process that's
okay.
allowed
But
under.
if there's a complaint and if it was placed there by a private person without permission from the city, it will be removed, right?
Not in compliance, correct.
So if it was placed by somebody without permission, and if there's a complaint against the thing encumbering on the public easement,
Yeah, if it's
it
brought to
will
our
be
attention.
removed by the city of Emeryville.
And if not in compliance, it should be removed, yeah.
What do you mean not in compliance?
I mean, it doesn't, if it's not allowed by Muni Code, then yeah, it should be removed.
Should be?
Yeah.
No, will be.
Well, I don't know all the details, so I'm just
No,
telling.
fairness and equitability. And wouldn't it be allowed by the municipal code? Is it a little library allowed in a community bulletin board and not allowed?
I don't think so, but I don't know.
What do you mean allowed by? What does that mean? Can you quantify that?
If the Muni Code or any of our ordinances allow any of something of the type, then they would be allowed to be out there, right?
No,
All
no.
those conditions are
No,
met.
if it's only allowed if the city places it on the city property.
Right, okay.
Right? Right?
On city
I mean,
property. Or
I can't
permission.
place
With
something that's
permission,
allowed.
You can also get an.
No, community bulletin board is allowed in the city of Emeryville, but it's got to be placed on the city property by the city, right?
Or.
There's nothing in the municipal
permission-
code that says community bulletin boards are horrible things and we, the people of Emeryville, decide we hate community bulletin boards and they're not allowed in our city. There's no law like that. They are allowed in our city, they have to be placed by the city of Emeryville,
Or
correct?
on their private property.
Or on private property. Okay, so those are the metrics. So it's 1, was it placed by a private individual, this private property? And then 2, is there a complaint against this thing? Now, the answer to both is yes, it's placed by, the answer to both is yes. then that thing must be removed. So says Pedro, correct? You stand by that, and you're a manager.
That will say we'll look into it, yes.
No, you're not looking into it, you're doing it, you're removing it. You just told me that's the metric.
Staff is looking into it. Is what
No,
I'm
I
saying.
asked you, how do we know if we're being treated fairly and equitably, and the law is being, how do we know that you're not just picking on Brian Donahue because he's a critic of the city of Emeryville? We know it because it's fair and equitable treatment under the law, correct?
Right, so if we get a complaint, we'll look into it.
No, you're not gonna look into it, you're gonna remove it.
We
There's
first need
no,
to
you
look
don't
into
have, no,
it.
there's no judgment here. It must be removed. You just told
Well,
me.
just because a complaint comes in doesn't mean that it's actually
No,
incorrect.
okay, well, okay, you're right. If a complaint comes in and there is no thing that this complaint is talking about, well, then of course, yes.
Right.
But if there is a thing and it's photo documented and it's shown and it's
it's in
on city property,
And it's not allowed, then
in
it
other
should
words,
be
if the
removed.
same metrics that caused you to remove the community bulletin board apply to something else, you must remove it, right?
Like I said, we look into it. And I'm not
Okay,
gonna
so
commit
now,
to
so you
something
can't have
that-
it. You can't have your cake and eat it too. Either you're going to say yes, fair and equal treatment under the law, or no, there is not fair and equal treatment under the law in Emeryville. Which one is it? Take your pick.
Oh, we want to treat everyone fairly.
Okay, well then you're not going to look into it. You're going to do what you did to my community bulletin board because that's how you treat people
But
equally
the
and
same way
fairly.
we got a complaint from yours, we looked
Yes.
into it first. That's the process.
Yes, and
we
you
do.
found that yes, there is a thing there, a community bulletin. Yes, the city of Emeryville did not place it there, so off it goes.
Correct.
So same with everything else in the public
Follows
easement.
that same process, yes.
Okay, so now you're saying yes, you
If it
will.
follows that same process,
Yeah,
yes.
okay, so complaint has to be
What
registered.
we just discussed right now is yes.
Yeah, complaint has to be registered, and then two, the thing has to be accurately described and by the complainant and not put there by the city of Emeryville.
Correct.
Then you will remove it.
Most likely.
Okay, so basically what you're saying is, F you, Brian. No, we're not treating people fairly and
Like I said,
equitably.
most
We're
likely.
going to treat you with a higher standard. You have to you
I
have
don't
to
know
behave
that.
better than other people do.
No, we're not holding you a different
Yeah.
standard, but I'm answering.
No, you
really-
can't have your cake and eat it. No, the law is law, black and white. It's not like nebulous. Well, you know, white people, well, they'll get a pass, but dark-skinned people, well, we're going to go come down like a ton of bricks on them. You can't do that. The law is the law. It's black and white. It applies to everybody fairly and equitably. And if I get you right here on camera telling me you're not going to do that, and that's what you strongly implied, that's fine. I'll
not
walk
what I
out of here.
said.
I will walk out of here. Just tell me that.
I said we treat everybody fairly and we'll look into complaint-driven complaints, and if it falls that it wasn't installed by the
Did you ever
city,
read?
then
Did you ever read George Orwell's 1984?
No.
Oh, you should read it. It's called Government Speak.
Mm-hmm.
This is what you're engaging in right now. Oh my God, is it shameless? It is so fucking shameless. You can't say you're going to treat everybody fairly and equitably.
think I have
Instead,
said
you have to say we're going to look into it. It depends on this. Why don't you just say it depends on the race of the person that's involved? If it's a
not
person
that.
whose race we don't like, then there's going to be another set of standards.
That's not what I've said. think
I know it hasn't, but why don't you say
trying
that?
to word it in a
I
different
know
way
you
for
have
your
not said.
benefit.
I know I've said that, but why not? But why not give yourself even more latitude? What if it's
not
stuff's
our
being placed in the
intention,
community on the community property that's done by a race that you guys don't like? Well, then why not give yourself that option? Then to say, because you're already doing it. It's just you should be more in the open. Just say like we don't, we're not darker skinned peoples we don't like, and so they're going to be held to a different standard.
Keep trying to say it in a different way that'll.
No, but what
hopefully
you
come
are
out
saying,
in a
no,
way
what you are saying is that people that are critics of City Hall will be treated with a different set of standards. Yeah, my thing is gone. And I only, there's only two
I went through
things.
the
There's two
process.
issues. One, it was placed without permission on city property. And then two, there was a complaint.
Right.
So those two items are all that you needed to remove it. And now when I ask you about the other things, you say, well, maybe. Maybe
I said
depends
most
on
likely
the.
if it falls under
It
the same
depends
scenario.
on whether or not we're in a good mood. It depends on whether or not we like the person. It depends on what race the person. How about the gender? Maybe we don't. Sure, all that you could. Yeah, that is capriciousness. But law can't be capricious. You can't say we'll look into it. No, to only one set of standards. You know about the Brown v. Board of Education Supreme Court decision? There's not separate but equal. You can't do that. Everybody has to be treated fairly and equally under the law. Period. You're constrained by the United States Constitution.
Right. Well,
You got to do it. And here you are wiggling weasel words, weaseling,
you just want
wiggling.
to say it in your own words.
No,
the
you
way
keep
that
saying
wanna have it,
well,
so-
we'll look into it.
Right. It depends on every complaint.
God, it's
We
so
look
corrupt.
into it. Like,
Okay,
every-
that's Emeryville, everybody. It's super corrupt. There you go. And this is Pedro. Your name, what is your name, please?
Pedro Jimenez,
And what is your title here?
Assistant City Manager.
So he's high level manager, and this is what we get.